What's going on, guys? Today we're going to learn a pretty cool jazz independence exercise. This exercise is based around triplets between the snare drum and the bass drum against the swing pattern of the ride and the hi-hat. Basically, we're going to play this. And as you can see, it's snare drum, bass drum, snare drum, bass drum, snare drum, bass drum, snare drum, bass drum, but they're in a triplet grid. Because in a bar 4/4, triplets are 4 groups of 3 notes. And that's an odd number, so every other beat is going to change its lead. For example, between the snare drum and the bass drum, we have snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass. So those are the 2 variations. Obviously for beat 3 and 4 we have to repeat beat 1 and 2, and it just becomes snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, bass. So on the drum set with a quarter note pulse with the hi-hat, this is what that sounds like. So once we got that, the snare, bass, snare part of the exercise, the first step before we actually jump into throwing in the swing pattern is just getting comfortable moving the other 2 limbs, basically our left foot and our right hand. I suggest starting out, if you're comfortable with the exchange between your snare drum and your bass drum, then start just playing quarter notes on the ride with 2 and 4 on the hi-hat. So this is what that sounds like. So once you have that down, it's basically just piecing it all together. If you want to attempt to put the swing pattern in at this stage, perfectly cool. If you're having a little bit of trouble with this, I suggest breaking it off into chunks. Like I said earlier, all you really have to learn are 2 variations and then just repeat those for 1 bar of 4/4. Why not just take the first beat and add the swing pattern with the hi-hat and just keep repeating only the first beat. Keep the swing pattern with the hi-hat going throughout the rest of the bar. So you're only actually playing beat number 1 on the snare drum and the bass drum. This is what that sounds like. So once that feels comfortable, then add beat 1 and beat 2. So now essentially you have both variations within the bar. Okay, next step is to put it all together. So you essentially have all 4 beats between your snare drum and your bass drum with the swing pattern. So one thing you can actually do with this pattern is not only keep it on the snare drum with your left hand, but you can move your left hand onto the toms. So this is what the snare drum lead sounds like for that. So anytime you have a particular sticking pattern or way of playing something on the drum set, 99% of the time there's the mirrored version of it, so the opposite of it. So we started off on the snare drum and we went snare, bass, snare, bass, snare. Now we're actually going to start with the bass drum. I'll demonstrate that for you, but I suggest going through and repeating the exact same steps as the first variation, only with this new one now. There's one more variation that I want to show you guys, and that is a little bit more complicated. So in the previous part of the video, we played snare, bass, snare, bass, snare. Just single, 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 single. Now we're going to play double, 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 but still play them in triplets. So this is what that looks like in a bar 4/4. And as you can see, it's not the most complicated in the world, but getting under your hands and your bass drum might be a bit of a challenge. This is what that sounds like, and then I'll kind of try to break it down. This is the doubles lead with the bass drum. So in the same way for the first part, we can do the doubles on the toms. So this is what that sounds like. And then the bass drum lead version. Okay guys, so I hope you dig this video. I hope you practice jazz. Jazz is important, even if you play metal, country, rock, anything like that. Jazz is a really important genre to just get under your hands because there's just so much involved. You have all four of your limbs involved. A lot of the time we neglect the hi-hat part of our playing, and a lot of jazz playing heavily involves the hi-hat. Just a kind of side note suggestion. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and leave me a comment, tell me what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be putting out new cover videos and new lessons soon. Take care for now.